welcome to Truck Stop Murder and True Crime Podcast. I am your host, Gary Howard. This is the episode that I wanted to do. If you listened to my last episode about the murder killing spree couple, I mentioned about this where I want to do, but I just couldn't find it. It's an unsolved case, so I thought I'd do it as a short and from Crime Doors. So we're talking about the murder of Bill or William, Bernice, and Barbara Peak. Happened on 9/10 of 1972, so September 10th, 1972. William Peak and Bernice Peak and Barbara Peak. The reward is $100,000 right now. Ron and Emma Allen arrived at the Grand Island, Nebraska, home of daughter Bernice Peak and her family on September 9th, 1972 to watch television. They entered the house and sat down in front of the TV, but noticed that the Peak's dog, Murdoch, was agitated. Ron followed the dog into the bedroom where he found his daughter bleeding on a blood-soaked white carpet. She was lying on top of her dead husband, 53-year-old William Peak. Their daughter, Barbara Peak, 14, was also dead, lying by a dresser. She had been shot once in the head and again in the shoulder. Bernice, 50, was still alive. Bill and Barbara was dead at the scene, but Bernice, 50, was taken to the hospital, but eventually succumbed to her injuries. Then following month in November, October, so August, in October, in November, I'll get it right. There was no signs of a struggle or a sexual assault on the scene. Bill had a cigarette close to his hand and a lighter in his under his body, like he was going to light a cigarette. His credit cards were found on Bismarck Road near Dodge School, and his wallet was located on Sycamore and Oklahoma Street. Theories abounded in the case, include the possibility it was a robbery or murder-suicide. Two long-haired young men driving a blue Chevrolet were reportedly seen in the area of Peak's home and identified as possible suspects. Men matching descriptions were picked up in Montana but never charged, despite ongoing efforts of Bernice's father and brother. Up until their own deaths, the case has never been solved. Of course, if you have any information leading to this, if you have any information, you are asked to contact the Nebraska Information Analyst Center via the Missing Persons Hotline at 877-441-5678. And I know you, well, 72. September 10th, 1972 seems like a long time ago, but keep in mind, they had just figured out who the boy in the box was. So on this thing, if you ever want to know true crime, this thing called Crime Doors, and I think I mentioned this before, where she has a map of the whole world actually, and has little pins all over the place. And once you go to these pins, like here, I found this one, and some of them have podcasts, some of them have YouTube videos, articles. This don't really have nothing. It has photos of the individuals, articles that you can find, but like the photos has a little saying underneath it. Bill and Bernice and Barbara were murdered in 1972. Barbara Peak was 14 when she was murdered. Bernice Peak, they called her Beanie, was 50. Bernice died November 8th, yes, 72, due to an infection from her injuries. William Oliver Peak died, age 53, died on September 9th, 1972. Bill was murdered along with his wife and daughter. But yeah, he was also a former colonel in the United States Army. And the body might have been found on a Sunday. I think they were getting ready to watch a football game. But one of the neighbors, Bob Mullen, well, they said they were murdered 20 hours prior to that, before their bodies were located. Bob Mullen, next door neighbor, was having a party the Saturday beforehand for a football game that ended at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we got pretty crazy, I guess, over there with all the neighborhoods. Everybody in neighborhoods. But at 10:31, the household said they heard a noise coming from the backyard because their houses were right next to each other. But when they investigated it, they didn't see nothing there. No signs of what made the noise. And then when the paper was delivered that morning, he was a big person. He always read the paper, but the paper was still found at their. I was going to say the names of the individuals they thought it was, but since they are not suspects, there's no reason to bring out their names because if they're innocent. So, but yeah, so I'm going to read you some of the articles that was on here. I'll just show you all the pictures will be on my Facebook group, on my social media pages at Truck Stopper and True Crime Podcast, or just Truck Stopper and True Crime. The first article I'm going to read from you from NTV ABC News. Cold case Bob Allen offers $100,000 in 1972 murders. Bob Allen has rubbed shoulders with world leaders, football legends, and governors, but there's something the 82-year-old retail giant hasn't done that sticks with him, and that's find the killer that left his sister, her husband, and 14-year-old daughter dead. The little girl, 14. If I saw the people that killed them, I don't know how I'd go, Allen said. He runs Allen's Hastings, known by its jingle as the You Got More Superstore. Bill and Bernice Peak and her daughter Barbara died of gunshot wounds. It was September 1972 in Grand Island home. When investigators didn't come up with any suspects, Allen's made their own conclusions about the long-haired friends of the Peaks children. Allen said, if anybody would be suspects, it would be those people, referring to the hippies. Just keep in mind this is 72. State Patrol investigators Dennis Leonard credits Allen for his determination in keeping the case in the spotlight. Leonard said, I have got great admiration for him. If there's a chance of being resolved, Bob Allen is going to be very much part of that. Not only did Bob Allen lose loved ones, he lost dreams to open up a store in Grand Island. The blueprints was ready for Bill Peak to run the store. Allen said, Bill and I had a big store complex designed. The successful businessman put up a $10,000 reward, stands ready to write a check for $100,000 to get justice. The State Patrol does not have hope. New signs could allow them to look at crime scene photos for new clues, but they're cautious about getting Allen's hopes up. Still, they haven't forgotten the case. Reporter's note by Steve White. Allen said a retired investigator later claimed the case was a murder-suicide. Allen said there's no evidence of that. He said Bill Peak was shot first, and then Bernice was shot while she was kneeling down. And finally, Barbara was shot. He also scoffed at reports that a hitman carried out the killing, saying they wouldn't have left Bernice alive. She died later of her injuries. And she actually almost survived the injury because her condition was getting better and better and better, but eventually the infection just got too bad and just took a turn for the worse. But yeah, Allen has been in contact with the governor over the years. He said Jim Exxon offered great help, but said investigations don't work the way they do on TV. He says it was frustrating to learn they don't work on one case until it's solved, rather than many cases and working simultaneously. Lieutenant Leonard said if the police don't have solid leads in 72 hours, a crime could easily become a cold case, which is this one. So he said you can imagine what it's like 36 years later of the time of this, when this was written, 72. So it's 2 years after I was born, so it's 51 years, and it's still cold. So, because I was born in 1970, this happened in 72, so it's still cold. So, yeah, 51 years. But he said, no, I'm going back. Yeah, 51. But he said the State Patrol's cold case squad continues to investigate and said new science and photo analysis could be proved helpful. But like I said, with new DNA technology, we don't know if they have DNA on the scene. We don't know. But I said they figured out who the boy in the box was. Another article that was written on this case, it was investigation stumped over 1972 killing, was written September 18th, 2008. His wrinkled hands gripped a flyer, F-L-I-E-R. He had printed more than 30 years ago. I wish they were still alive, Bob Allen says in a hushed voice as he stares at a black and white photo of the page. His sister, Bernice Peak, with her broad smile and a strand of pearls circling her neck. Her husband, retired Colonel Bill Peak, his brush cut hinting of his military service. The youngest, 14-year-old Barbara, her long hair styled with the middle part. Of course, I'm going to have pictures of it all right now. At the time, it was a $10,000 reward, but now it's $100,000. The poster that shows it, which tips starts Allen's paper war to solve the start. That didn't make no sense. Because I'm reading it here, but the poster that soliciting tips helped Allen paper war to solve the Starlin triple, slaying on September 9th near Grand Island. In decades since, Allen has accumulated a 6-inch stack of correspondence and clippings on the case and others like it in his office at his department store, Allen's in Hastings. His office walls hold shrines to his achievements, meetings by meeting Fidel Castro when he was Hastings mayor, serving as University of Nebraska's regent, being one of Nebraska's longest running retailers. For everything Allen has accomplished in his 82 years, this is one thing he hasn't. He still doesn't know who killed his sister. Allen White, wavy hair, his comb back and stark against his sharp black blazer, a monogrammed shirt pocket peeking out. Age has bent his tall frame, so he's getting kind of old on that picture. It's just pretty much just states everything that the Grand Island Burn permit by his council where he's going to build a permit. The weekend before was the first Husker game of the year. Let's talk about that now. Alan and his wife. Well, let's go back and read all of that because I felt like I was reading the same thing. Alan's white wavy hair. I read that. His oversized blonde stained desk is covered by stacks of paper. Yeah. In less than a minute, he could find a yellowed plot map to show why his sister Bernice and her family came to Nebraska. Her husband was an army colonel who served as a military Attache Archavi in Russia and Hungary. Alan's parents persuaded the Peaks to retire to Grand Island, where Peak could run an Allen store where they would build at 13th and Webb Street. Bob Allen already had a store in Hastings, and his brother Bruce had one in North Platte, which, by the way, Grand Island is where that highway was shut down, where I'm still stuck here where I'm at. The Grand Island building permit was on the city council agenda on September 11th, 1972, but the Peaks wouldn't see the day. The weekend before the first Husker game came on, Allen and his wife had flown to the game at UCLA, the first since Nebraska won the 1971 national championship. The day after the game, Bob Allen's father went to Peaks Lakeside home just off Gun Barrel Road to watch the Bob Denevy show with them. Instead, he found their bodies in the master bedroom. Bill, Bernice, and Barbara all had been shot in the head with a 22 caliber gun. Bernice, despite a gunshot to the face, still was alive. The Allens flew home and rushed to Bernice's bedside. How many were there? Allen remembered asking her sister. Unable to talk and write, Bernice held up several fingers. There's a lot of people there. The family hoped, but she was never able to give any more detail besides that because of her condition. The family hoped for details as her condition improved. Bernice took any answers to her grave, dying 2 months later of the infection. 2 days after her death, Allen sent a letter pleading for help. He criticized Hall County authorities, although other investigators later commended his work. Dear Governor, here's what he wrote. Dear Governor Exxon, the big Pentagon was understandable, upset over Colonel Peak's murder because of Bill having gone through so many dangerous wars and situations, and then to be shot down and killed in his bedroom upon returning supposedly safe Nebraska. The murders of Peaks will not only obviously help attract, the murders of the Peaks will not obviously help attract people to select Nebraska to retire to. It will help the state if these murders are found and brought to justice, which Nebraska is a nice state. I mean, there's really nothing there. I mean, you have Omaha and Lincoln, but I mean, it's a place you retire to. I don't think it's a place where you go to look fun. Maybe in college in Nebraska, Lincoln, but for the most part, it's just some place you want to chill, relax, and retire to. If I have any listeners in Nebraska, let me know. Why are you in Nebraska? But yeah, the crime scene showed no sign of sexual assault or even a struggle. In fact, Peake seemed to be lighting a cigarette. He had a lighter in one hand and a cigarette beneath his body. And I know I'm probably repeating some of my stuff, but I'm just reading these articles as I see them on this. I want to make sure that I don't want to miss nothing out on this. Investigators ruled out 2 men arrested on drug charges. A mysterious car seen in the area turned out to belong to an anonymous couple, not the killer. Bill Peake's Army travel spurred talk of Russian hitman, with Allen finds ridiculous. Professional killers wouldn't have left his sister alive. Allen has collected tips from locals about a biker and a rumor that the Peaks were going to disclose information about a wife swapping information a routine. A resident of Nebraska psychiatric psychotic center sent him a letter during a psychiatric. Why can't I say that word? Psychiatrc psychiatric center. Sent him a letter during a drug deal in Nogales, Arizona. A man asked me if I ever killed anyone. I said I've brokered the hit on the Peak family. I did not do it. I'll call on my twisted mind, spoke it out. I like you and hope you understand. So somebody in Nogales said he did it. I don't know. What do you think? I'll read that again. During a drug deal in Nogales, Arizona, a man asked me if that's just a resident of the Nebraska, a resident of Nebraska Center. That's like what I can't say. Center sent a letter to that and during a drug deal in Nogales. A man asked me if I ever killed anyone. I said I brokered the hit on the Peak family. I did not do it. I'll call on my twisted mind. Spoke it out. I like you and hope you understand. Okay. In 1997, in a new article on the 25th anniversary of the slayings, one retired investigator said the deaths could not have been a murder suicide with Allen's father hiding the gun, contradicting public statements by other investigators and infuriating Allen. A patrol investigator and National FBI personnel later reconfirmed it was a triple homicide. In the absence of answers, Allen and his wife have created their own theories. Allen is convinced the Peaks were killed by a peeping Tom, sneaking looks at Barbara, who had a adult torso, as he puts it. I think Bill was trying to talk with him and reason with him, and he just shot him. Allen says, I'm sure that Bernice fell apart. She just adored him. That's why she was probably on her knees crying. And this is just what this man theorizes. You know, and Barbara, no, he says, seeing new astonishments that someone could shoot the girl. His wife, George, scoffs at the husband. The idea of Pekin Tom could it be armed? You know what she said. That's the guy writing the letter, Alan. His wife said, "This is crazy. Peeping Toms, would they be armed?" She was suspicious of several long-haired boys. There's them guys again, college friends of another daughter who had stayed at the Peak House. Allen twice had hired private investigators to work the case. They kept sending letters, pressing state officials to help, working every angle that came to mind. He pressured. He pressured to Governor K. Orr, 1987. We have no chance but to use legal means and public notice through the news media. Of course, in 93, we do not receive the support that the state patrol from the Republicans were in charge of the governor's match, so that he don't think they're helping. He coached up the to Governor Mike Johnson in 2001. We agree with you. Oh, by the way, that was the governor in 93, Ben Nelson. He wrote to, we did not. And then he wrote to Governor Mike Johannes in 2001. We agree with you in so many areas, such as your desire to see speedier executions, also your defense of tax breaks for big businesses. He personalized the victims. A 1998 letter to the state patrol chief included a news article with a trooper's picture. When I look at his picture, it reminds me of Bill Peak. Bill was a brilliant Army officer. Allen has a simple reason for his 3 decades of persistence. I don't think people who murder should get away with it, he says. State Patrol Lieutenant Dennis Leonard reviewed the case after one of Allen's letters. He's been in contact with, I think, every governor asking not to let this thing fade away. Please do what you can, he said. I admire his devotion. Even though the file is fat, evidence doesn't point towards any suspect or the chance of DNA tests making the lower priority than other cases, Leonard said. So they don't think it's very important. We're doing, we're going to spend more time and more dollars on the cases that have high probability of solving, he said, but it doesn't mean we're going to forget about the case. Allen's commitment has outlasted his parents and only brother, Governor Exxon, the original patrol investigator and both private investigators. His letter writing Wayne about 5 years ago after the cold case investigators got involved. Allen was surprised to learn the investigators juggled dozens of cases. He thought they once they got a case, they only did one case. The Peak murder is just one in the movies. It's just one case at a time, he says. After several years, you can't get discouraged. So he's continuing to try and figure out who killed his sister. If you want to pay your respect to William Oliver Peak III, he was born November 18th, 1918. He died September 10th, 1972, at age 53, of course, in Grand Island. He is buried in Arlington National Park, and that's in Arlington, Virginia. You will find him in Section 10, grave 10773LH, and which is also in the same where his wife is buried. She was born Bernice Peak, February 22nd, 1922. Of course, she died November 8th, 1972, at age 50. She also is buried in Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, Section 10, grave 10773-LH. I believe it's the same for her husband LH, yes. As for their daughter, she's also buried in Arlington National Park. She was born March 26, 1958. Of course, died the same day as her father, September 10th, 1972, age 14. And she is in the same thing, Section 10, grave 10773LH in Arlington National Park in Arlington, Virginia. So there you go. This is the case that I wanted to do. And actually, I had more to it than I thought if you could understand it all. I kind of went off track a few times. I was reading what the article stated about it. Hopefully, you can understand. If you like that and you want more similar ones like that, but mainly this is just because I didn't see nobody out there doing it, and I want to get this information out there just in case if somebody was around there or know somebody was talking or deathbed confession or it could be anything. If you know any information about who killed the Peaks, please call the hot. The if you have any information, you are, like I said, contact Nebraska Information Analyst Center via the missing person hotline at 877-441-5678. Or you could probably call any of your police departments or anything like that, local missing people, and tell them the information. They could probably help you with that. Well, all right, then. Well, there you go. Hope everybody has a good day. I'm right down from Grand Island, and I see they opened it up, but it's still closing for Gurney. You all have a good night. Take care.